Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we've got lots and lots of attendees joining from all corners of the world. Welcome to this first episode in our second series of Dream Destinations. We are Daniel Dankwitz. Well, I am Daniel Dankwitz, and we've got Keith Valentine, our managing director, joining us this evening. He's going to be presenting, telling us a little bit more about Borneo. And then we've got John Lowry with us, who is the business relations manager at the ABA. So we'll give another minute or so to allow some of the latecomers to join. But I'd just like to say again, thank you so very much for joining this webinar this evening. This is going to be the first of several more webinars that we will be releasing in the coming months. We're going to be looking to do about one webinar each and every month, usually on the last Wednesday of the month. So in the coming months, February and March, we'll be featuring Southern Peru with Rob Williams, one of our senior tour leaders, as well as Northwestern Argentina with Stefan Lawrence. So do stay tuned, follow our social media for updates and announcements there. And then to briefly introduce our speaker this evening, we obviously have Keith, who's going to be sharing Borneo. I'm especially excited for this. Borneo is an absolutely brilliant destination. There is no better time to travel to Borneo than now. And I'm sure Keith will be sharing a little bit as to why that is the case. But to introduce Keith briefly, Keith developed his interest in the outdoors and birding at the very tender young age of 6. And by the age of 21, Keith became the youngest person to have ever seen 850 bird species in the Southern African subregion, which is not an easy feat at all. If you don't know, that's the equivalent of our ABA listing region here in Southern Africa. Keith and I are both tuning in tonight from South Africa. Following school, Keith then completed his degree in financial management, but he decided to pursue his passion for birds and a career in tourism. He's now been with Rockjumper for over 11 years and has quite literally steered, he now quite literally steers the Rockjumper ship as our managing director. Keith and I have been working hand in hand over the last year or so on this Borneo ABA tour, which we have scheduled for later this year. And we're so very excited to be sharing a little bit more about this incredible destination with you today. Keith continues to guide for Rockjumper throughout the world and has an in-depth knowledge of our planet's birds and wildlife. In particular, he has a particular passion for birding rainforests throughout Africa and Asia. So Keith, thank you so very much for your time tonight. Thank you for sharing your incredible passion with us. You are so contagious when you talk about birds, and I'm so looking forward to hearing what you have to say this evening about Borneo. And on that note, I would then like to hand over to John Lowry briefly, who will say a few words about the ABA itself and our involvement with them, how this tour originates, and from there we will kick straight into the webinar. So John, over to you.
Thanks so much, Daniel. I know you guys brought me on here just to make me remember the birds I missed when I was in Borneo last year and make me jealous, but it just makes me want to go back. I was there last year and actually ran into a rock jumper group with some friends on Mount Kinabalu, which we'll hear about shortly. But that's the great thing about travel is especially traveling with friends, and that's why the ABA has a travel program, is we do make these connections around the world. You can bump into folks from back home in these places or travel with them, better yet. For those of you who don't know what the ABA is, not the American Basketball Association or the American Bankers Association, we're the American Birding Association. We're a membership organization. We'd love to have you as a member if you care like we do about inspiring others to enjoy and protect wild birds. But even if you're just curious about what we do and want to enjoy the free resources we provide, which are funded by our members and donors and partners, you can find more about us on our website. We've got plenty of free resources there for the beginning birder, for the advanced birder. And again, if you are interested in having access to all the things our members have, you should join because you have access to every article ever written in our 50-year history on our birding magazine, which is on our website. Also on our website, you'll find our travel page, which allows you to learn more about our destinations like Borneo, and also about our free ABA community weekends, which is a new program run through our ABA travel, which encourages folks in areas, cities and such who may not know much about birding, but have heard about it and want to get out and interact with birders and find out more about the birds in their neighborhood. We're very happy to have this program starting this year, and we'd love to have you as a part of it. So in any case, as I'm staring at this picture of an orangutan and thinking of my great experiences with it, I'll hand you back to the man who I hope to be traveling with again soon. So thanks, Keith. Let's go to Borneo.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Daniel. Before I kickstart, just a reminder, folks, if you do have any questions, just go ahead and pop those into the chats function, which you'll find either top or bottom of your screen, and we'll deal with that in the question and answers session at the end of the webinar itself. But yeah, on that note, let's get started. We're off to Borneo. We're going to do a little virtual travel around there, and yeah, you've been staring at these two front page images for a while. Bornean orangutan and black crown pitta, two obviously fantastic targets that are possible on this ABA tour of Borneo. But yeah, that's a little bit later. That's once we get into the Danum Valley. So first things first, where on earth is Borneo? Borneo is an island, for those who didn't know, and it's situated out in the continent of Asia, and quite specifically in Southeast Asia. So down in this zone over here. And it's a fairly large island. Just moving along here to the next graphic. And this is just zoned in a little bit more. So you've got the Malay Peninsula up here on the top left, and you've got Sumatra coming down here on the left as well, and towards the bottom, then you've got Java and Timor-Leste and this whole Banda Sea region. And then situated right here in the middle is the island of Borneo. And for those of you who are wondering, I mean, how large is this island? Where does it rank in amongst the world's sort of top islands or top islands as far as size goes out there? I wonder if anyone's got any idea. Just not shouting loud enough. Although I think I did hear a few coming through that said the third largest island in the world. So well done for those who knew that it's the third largest island. The largest island in the world is Greenland. Second largest island is the island of New Guinea, followed by Borneo, and then fourth in that list is Madagascar, for those who are into a little bit of random trivia. But yeah, Borneo, third largest island, and interestingly, it belongs essentially to two countries. So the provinces here in the north and the northeast, Sabah and Sarawak, they are part of Malaysia. Then you've got the independent country here of Brunei, and then this bottom area, Kalimantan, that's all part of Indonesia. So quite a few people have laid claim to Borneo over the years. Yeah, makes it somewhat interesting. But for the ABA trip, and for most of this webinar, we're going to be focusing on the sort of northern area of Sabah. And Sabah, as I mentioned, part of Malaysia, is the most accessible zone, or readily accessible zone in Borneo. Good infrastructure, excellent food, good lodgings, and then a lot of great species as well. So what they've done is they've managed to protect quite a bit of habitat. It is accessible as well. And so it's for a long time has been the most accessible side of Borneo, and the easiest place to get into and see a lot of Borneo's top species. Just zooming in a little bit more, this is actually a tour map of essentially the ABA Borneo tour that we're putting together. It also gives you a good idea of where some of the other sites are itself, and as I say, focusing in on Sabah, that northern region. So you can see a variety of the sites that we're going to be visiting using Kota Kinabalu as a base, and on the ABA trip. And from there, we make day trips out into areas of Mount Kinabalu and Poring and the Crocker Range, and then also down to Klias. Klias is actually quite close to the Sarawak border, which is a different province. And then what we do is we fly over to Lahadatu, which is out here on sort of the east coast, and make our way down into the Danum Valley. Now, those are some of the absolute key sites that we'll visit on the ABA trip itself. So moving along, what makes Borneo so special? I mean, why do we want to go there? Why do we care about this island as people who care about nature and conservation and species diversity and all these things that interest us as birders? What makes Borneo so unique? Well, it is a biodiversity hotspot, number one, but it's got an incredible 59 endemic species of birds. And that's, well, anyone who's a lister or has been traveling to a variety of countries, you will, you'll know 59 endemics. That's quite some going. It's a good chunk of endemic birds, a good chunk of special birds, and some of them are absolute rippers. I mean, some of the most stunning birds on the planet are found there, and some of the most unique as well. Species like Bornean Bristlehead come front and center to mind. There's also 63 endemic species of mammals. There's 19 endemic fish, over 6,000 endemic plants. And importantly, there's 3 endemic bird areas, according to BirdLife International. These include the Sabah lowlands, the Bornean mountains, the Bornean coastal zone. So they're areas that are high in endemicism and hold a critical number of rare and threatened species as well. Interestingly, between 1995 and 2010, over 600 species were discovered. That's quite amazing to think, because that's not that long ago. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken anymore and started birding back in pretty much 1990. But you know, we're talking about times that you know we can all very vividly remember. And 600 species is absolutely incredible. But I've got that sadly in there. Because Borneo itself has also unfortunately been, so I'm just checking, yeah, there we go. And Borneo has unfortunately also been subject to rampant deforestation. It's had a lot of its native forest cover removed, and you know, it's one of those places, if you sort of keep track of what's happening in the conservation world, it's always been a story. And unfortunately, a lot of oil palm has moved into parts of Borneo. It means a lot of habitat loss, and there is that side of things. So, you know, orangutans have lost 90% of their natural habitat in the last 20 years. That's a frightening stat. And a lot of the species, or a lot of orangutan are hanging on in little patches of forest or very much adjacent to oil palms in zones, you know, where, again, you know, just 20, 30, 40 years ago, these were great big forests, and able to hold good populations. You can see that over 7 million hectares of old growth forest has been lost in the last 20 years. 88% of the forest loss was due to oil palm plantations. And essentially, only 50% of Borneo's natural rainforests remain. Now, that's still a fairly significant number compared to some other countries, which have got sort of more horrific conservation stories, but still, it's how recent it's happened in Borneo that I guess is the concerning thing, and how the oil palm plantations have just taken hold in a massive way. And as I've included there, you know, the figure was 75% in the mid-80s, so a lot of this is very recent. That there is palm oil, the image itself, that's being trucked away. It's being cut and trucked and going to a processing plant. You'll see here the next slide itself. Logging itself, I mean, a lot of the forests themselves need to be, well, they're logged first, and then the palm oil moves in. That's me back a few years ago. If you're tuning in and remember, cast your mind back to 2008. If you happen to travel with me back then, that's what it looked like. There's a bit more hair on that head, but yeah, those logs are huge. You can see just the size of them. I mean, I'm not a small guy, and those are massive logs that are coming out the forest. This was actually taken on the entrance road towards the Danum Valley concession. Fortunately, this is a thing of the past. You just don't see these logging trucks coming out of there anymore. And I guess that's where part of this has changed, because what we are seeing, thankfully, in the last 3 years is that this rampant rate of deforestation has certainly eased up. And you might be wondering, oh, why am I painting this, this picture of demise across Borneo? But the reality is that, yeah, deforestation, conservation efforts, and what have you, should be forefront of our minds. And part of it is, why should we go there? And I think as global bird watchers or nature enthusiasts, or wherever you fit into the scale, we enjoy travel, we enjoy seeing different countries, we enjoy experiencing different cultures and different things and seeing our globe. And that biodiversity is important to us. And by traveling and supporting, the conservation initiatives that are going on, or supporting the ecotourism projects that are in the area, or just the lodges, that employ so many people from the surrounding communities, it's just adding or giving back in some small way. And what it means is that places like this can still thrive, still survive, and still hold an incredible number of species. So this is the Danum Valley here at sunrise, just a nice forest image. And there are lots of places in Borneo that are still like this, and that's the beauty. And long may it last. But it does need support. It does need people, traveling and wanting to actually see what these places have to offer. And inside these forests, you've got gorgeous endemics like this blue-headed pitta. It's one of my favorite birds, which is why I included it there. It is endemic to Borneo. It's an absolute jewel of the understory. And yeah, thankfully, there are these protected areas still around that support amazing species like this blue-headed pitta. Right, so where do we start? Well, Kota Kinabalu, where that arrow is pointing to, that is the main gateway essentially into Malaysian part of Borneo and into the Sabah province, Kota Kinabalu being the capital, and really easy to get to from a number of global airlines with flights direct in from a lot of big cities in Asia. So it's not a complicated place to get into Borneo or travel to. It does take a bit of time to get to from various parts of the world, depends on where you're coming from. But yeah, Kota Kinabalu, the gateway to Sabah, Borneo. And for most people, you don't come in by boat or swim, you tend to fly in, and this is a little bit of a view from the air. Back in the day, Kota Kinabalu was very much peat swamp, so a lot of peat swamp forests. Sadly, a lot of these are now gone. They've been logged, they've been cleared for farming, for agriculture, rice paddies, and oil palm as well. So a lot of these peat swamps are quite fragmented, but you can see here, this image was actually taken back in 2008, one of my first trips out there. But it gives you an indication of, the coastline, some of the beaches, the estuaries, the waterways, and a little bit what it looks like from the air. You'll also notice there's a lot of offshore islands, so excellent snorkeling opportunities as well. If anyone wants to extend stays on Borneo and visit one of the offshore islands and do some snorkeling or stay at a dive resort or so, there's a lot of opportunities off of Borneo, particularly northern Borneo. And this is Guyana Island, which is just situated off of Kota Kinabalu. Not somewhere we visit on the tour, but yeah, you'll see it from the airplane as you fly in. So onto the birding. Where do we kick start? Well, as I mentioned before, on the ABA tour specifically, we used Kota Kinabalu as a base. So we stayed at a nice hotel there in downtown Kota Kinabalu, and it serves as a great access point for getting out to key zones or key birding locations like the Crocker Range, which is in the high mountains, Mount Kinabalu itself, which is a very famous site, and then some of the coastal sites as well. So areas like Klias Peat Swamp, so you actually get to see some of that ancient peat swamp forest and actually bird in there. And then we also visit some of the parks and what have you adjacent to the coast, which also offer a variety of birds. And like this, the Nankeen night heron. So the different night heron species, these guys actually breed in quite good numbers, together with black crown night heron. Black crown night heron, most of you will be familiar with. It's a ubiquitous bird, global in distribution pretty much. But yeah, Nankeen night heron, a nice special of Asia out there. This one actually taken on a nest at a nesting colony. Yeah, and then when you're walking around there, sort of next to some of these little coastal forests in the parks, we look out for species like the Sunda pygmy woodpecker. For those of you who are tuning in from the USA, this is kind of similar in size to your downy woodpecker, so fairly small woodpecker. But yeah, lovely, lovely species. This is a different family altogether. For those of you who've never been into Asia or Australasia, these are the wood swallows. There's a bunch of, well, these guys are very friendly. They want to congregate and get stuck in. I don't know if it was a cold day or what, but it's a cool image. They're all perched out on a palm frond there. But white-breasted wood swallow, they're pretty common. They're pretty ubiquitous in the area, and always a fun bird to see. Yeah, and then along the waterways and sort of the tidal zones, you find birds like Pacific reef heron as well. This is a dark morph bird, and again, one of the more common species that you'll find when you're birding out in that zone. This is another widespread Asian kingfisher, collared kingfisher. But yeah, beautiful species. You should see quite a lot of these, especially in the coastal zones. Moving to Clias, this particular bird, it's an amazing shot of the species. It's actually quite a rare bird. It's near threatened as far as conservation status goes, but the red-crowned barbet is very much a peat swamp specialist, and occurs in dotted sites through the Malay Peninsula, just into southern Thailand, and then across over into this area of Borneo as well. And when we're in the Clias area, Clias peat swamp area, this is going to be one of the key birds that we're going to be looking for, the red-crowned barbet. It's a gorgeous bird. And especially when it's seen that well, and other birds in that area as well, like Raffles's malkoa. So yeah, just a little bit of an overview of some of the more widespread species that we might see out in those zones. But a lot of our time, or a number of days, are going to be focused in the highlands, and that's where a lot of the endemics are found. And there's gorgeous scenery around as well. And you get views like this. You know, you can just see these cloaked forests. This is Mount Kinabalu. It stands at over 4,000 meters, so over 13,000 feet high. Obviously, for mountaineers, it's a great mountain to go ahead and climb. But yeah, it is just decked in great montane forest, and you know, it still offers a really authentic Bornean mountain forest experience, and really is. It's one of the true gems of birding on Borneo, and just super exciting. You know, you've just got a bunch of great species that are possible out there, which we'll start getting into shortly. But this is just a bit of a closer view of Mount Kinabalu itself, showing some of the peaks and the structure. You can get a bit of an appreciation for its ruggedness to some degree. This is one of the beautiful viewpoints. So there's actually a road that goes a fair ways up the mountain and takes you to a particular gate, the Timpahan Gate. And that makes a great birding location. You then get into some of the higher altitude forest, and from there you can then bird your way back down the road. So we'll do a lot of that on Mount Kinabalu. It is mountainous, but what we like to do is find a particular zone, go to a certain altitude, and then you walk down and you bird your way down the road. It just tends to be easier that way, and far more enjoyable. And it means that instead of huffing and puffing, you can actually sit and watch for birds and find things yourself. But this is one of the lovely viewpoints on the way up. And again, you can see Kinabalu on a nice clear day, and a lot of the forest around. This is actually turned around and spun in the other direction, so you get a nice view down the valley itself. Again, you can see the volumes of forest, the hills cloaked in great habitat. And yeah, piles of endemics possible. This is just a little bit of the forest scenery as well, gives you a feel for what some of the streams are like and some of the habitat. But as I say, lots of great birds. So white-eyes, I mean, what would an island be without a white-eye? But this is the black-capped white-eye, the distinctive little guy. They go around in little mixed flocks, usually quite noisy. And yeah, you can often get very nice views of them. This is one of the stunners. Again, when you're in the old world, sunbirds are one of the gem families to look for. This is the Temminck sunbird, so it likes a little bit of higher altitude. It's on a sister species to crimson sunbird, which tends to occur in the sort of lower elevation through a lot of Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia. But yeah, Temminck's a real special of the montane forests up there, and yeah, just a gorgeous bird to come across. This is a male of that species. This is one of the core birds of sort of the mixed flocks when you're birding around on Kinabalu. This is the Sunda cuckoo shrike, and yeah, again, nice species to come across. Laughing thrushes are always highlight on any trip to Asia. They're one of my favorite little families. out when you're birding in Asia. These guys tend to go around in quite large flocks. This is chestnut hooded laughing thrush, and it's endemic as well to Borneo. It was split quite a number of years ago from the chestnut capped laughing thrush, which is found on the Malay Peninsula. But yeah, as I say, these guys go around in big groups, they're often quite noisy. And if you get really lucky, you got to look amongst these flocks quite carefully, because every now and then you find one of these guys or a little flock of these guys mixed in amongst the Sunda laughing thrush. They tend to be the more uncommon species on the mountain. And yeah, always a good special to find. They can be quite approachable though. So when you do find them, they're not too shy of people. They will allow you to get some licks. So you've got, yeah, as I say, chestnut crown, pretty much the common one. You've got Sunda laughing thrush, and then the rarest of them all. This is the seriously prized bird on Kinabalu. It took me many trips to find this guy, but this is bare-headed laughing thrush, endemic to Borneo. Only found at a few little dotted locations. Some of them in Sarawak itself, and then over in Sabah on Kinabalu. But this is the bare-headed laughing thrush, the crazy-looking bird. I mean, in the photo, you can't really see the bare head, but it literally has no feathers on the head. And then this bright orange beak, and then an all-black laughing thrush. And again, like most laughing thrushes, they do occur in small groups. Yeah, laughing thrushes tend to be, if you've encountered them before, you'll know there's laughing thrushes that like to be seen and laughing thrushes that don't like to be seen. Some of them can be particularly skulky. And this one's not particularly skulky as such. It tends to like areas mid-strata where there's a lot of tangled vines and lianas, and they work in those areas. And they do hang out with some of the other laughing thrushes as well, or in the vicinity. But what makes them difficult to find is that they're just rare. There's just not a lot of them. Bare-headed laughing thrush, very low density bird, but certainly one we'll be keeping our eyes out for whilst we're exploring Mount Kinabalu on the ABA tour. Right, this one's endemic. This is a beautiful little bird, and they're fairly common actually on the mountain, the black-sided flower pecker. This one's got a nice little fruit that it's found. But yeah, they're great birds to see. This is indigo flycatcher, another beautiful little bird. These guys are fairly common on the mountain. You tend to stumble across them quite regularly. So they're very pleasant species to encounter. They tend to be quite photogenic, and yeah, lovely little guys to lay eyes on. This one's one of the more widespread species through Southeast Asia, the mountain tailor bird. And yeah, they're not always quite as showy as this. This was a particular one that jumped out in the open and just snap off a photo. But yeah, very cool species. And one of the calls that you actually see, or it's not see, but hear during whilst you're birding is mountain tailor bird. They've got a beautiful little tune, and yeah, great looking bird as well when seen well. This one is endemic. This is the Bornean leaf bird. Yeah, best area to try and see this is actually not on Mount Kinabalu itself, but on the Kruger Range. There's a few species that are endemic to the highlands of Borneo, but which are better viewed in the Crocker Range itself. And we'll spend a day out in the Crocker Range, and we'll spend a couple of days on Mount Kinabalu, yeah, birding and just finding a whole range of these great birds. But yeah, Bornean leaf bird, good special, and as I say, best found over in the Crocker Range. This one's got himself a lovely insect. This is the checker-throated woodpecker, another great-looking woodpecker. It's part of the yellow nape group, and you can see that they've got these great big yellow napes, and usually have, yeah, the olive in color, beautiful red wings, and these are kind of statement woodpeckers. They're bold, they're a bit in your face, they've got attitude, they're really cool birds. And they're also generally part of the mixed species flocks on Mount Kinabalu, checker-throated woodpecker. This one, probably one of the most prized birds, or right up there with some of the most prized birds on Kinabalu itself. This is Bornean green magpie. It's an endemic. It's an absolutely amazing looking bird. And again, they go around in small little groups. And fortunately for us, they're not that rare on the mountain. A lot of these magpies, particularly these green varieties in other parts of Indonesia or through their ranges in Vietnam, are sadly trapped heavily for the cage bird trade. But this is not such an issue on Borneo. It certainly hasn't been the case. And yeah, these Bornean green magpies are still doing very well on the mountain, and yeah, you still see good flocks of them. They're still a special bird to see, but yeah, they're not ridiculously uncommon or anything. It's one of those that you can sort of expect to encounter during your time birding. But yeah, gorgeous birds with a lot of attitude. This one is endemic as well, the mountain black-eye. It's a bit more localized in its occurrence because it tends to occur at higher altitude. So it doesn't occur on the sort of foothill forest zones of Kinabalu. It tends to be around only the Timpan Gate and then above. So those who sort of hike up Mount Kinabalu, and if you're a birder, well, you'll start seeing quite a few of these. But for us on a typical tour, we've got to get right up to that altitude and then really work the zones out there to try and find the mountain black-eye. And the mountain black-eye is a type of white-eye. It's just a slightly aberrant one with a black eye rather than a white eye. You get these slightly more aberrant white eyes. This one you can see has got a bit of a longer beak as well. So just a slightly different white eye. Essentially, good number of barbets in the area as well. Barbets are always a very cool family. The old world barbets are different to the new world barbets. A lot more variety in the old world as well. And these barbets as well are very different in Asia to the African barbets too. Their own family as well. So the Asian barbets tend to largely be green in color, blend in well with trees, and they tend to have nice head patterns and what have you. But this is the golden nape barbet. It's endemic to the mountain, and it's also not a particularly rare species. It's a good species to find, but it's not particularly rare. But we'll also be looking for other birds like mountain barbet and others as well. Bornean barbet too, a small little barbet. I don't have pictures of those actually on the slideshow, but those are some of the other endemics. There's actually 3 endemic barbets to Kinabalu, to the mountain forests in Borneo. Right, into the understory we go, and these tend to be a little more shy, a little more secretive, but there's good numbers of these, well, a good number of understory species to search for as well on Mount Kinabalu. This is the eye-browed jungle flycatcher. It's also endemic. It's also a really good special to find. And then these guys, wren babblers. If any of you have been into Asia and done some birding around there, you'll probably have a wren babbler story or two. They can be notoriously sort of tricky to see. They're a little bit like the tapaculos almost of Asia, the wren babblers. They tend to be in the understory, a little bit sneaky. I'd say not as hard as many tapaculos, and they sometimes they can be a bit showy. This is mountain wren babbler. It's actually one of the easier wren babblers, and yeah, good chances of seeing them. Not always quite as well as this, but yeah, good chances of seeing them. And yeah, they're cool birds to find and look for. This one endemic as well. You'll see the endemic tag is going to be against quite a number of these birds that I'm showing here. Yeah, a lot of cool species. This is, well, one of Mount Kinabalu's most frequently missed species, probably the Everett's thrush. There's a few particularly rare birds on Mount Kinabalu that a lot of birders dream about seeing. And the beauty about it is when you go there, well, you're allowed to dream. You can enjoy this virtually back home, but there's nothing like actually being in the zone and having a chance at seeing these birds. And they really are. They're adrenaline rush species. They require searching. They require some stealth, a bit of luck. There's a whole bit of action really that goes into finding some of these specials. And Mount Kinabalu's got a chunk of these species. And a lot of them are beautiful as well and very distinctive, and that makes them highly desirable too. But Everett's thrush is right up there. It's not an easy bird. It is endemic, but again, one that we'll certainly spend some time looking for. This is another one, the red-breasted partridge, endemic as well. These have become a little bit easier recently in that there's actually zones where they've almost got sort of regular. They don't feed them all the time, but they're almost like feeding stations. So a little bit like pittas in South America and what have you. There are these zones in some Southeast Asian countries where they do put little mealworms out or what have you. And I guess the birds are in some way somewhat habituated, but it does mean that you can actually see birds like red-breasted partridge. Whereas in the past, when I did my first trips there, this was an incredibly hard bird to see, let alone photograph. I used to hear them calling in the forest, but laying eyes on one was almost impossible. But again, the species is endemic as well. And another species in a similar vein here is crimson-headed partridge. I don't have an image of it to share, but yeah, they've also become a lot more gettable in recent times. Right, then birds named after John Whitehead. There's three of them in Monton, Borneo. This is the white-head spider hunter. It's a very distinctive spider hunter, long-beaked. They're almost like sunbirds in a way, but you can see a short-tailed, long-beaked, big yellow vent, and a lot of streaking. And this is one of the prized specials on the mountain. The other whiteheads birds, I can hear some of you shouting through your screens at me, are the trogon and the broadbill. And we're going to get to those now. This is the whitehead's trogon. It's an absolutely incredible bird. And they tend to perch often around sort of eye level in forests. So it does give you an opportunity to see them or to try and pick them up. And you can imagine you'd think a bright red bird like this in the forest is going to be unmissable. But the reality is this is a very overlooked species. But if one's there and you're looking, you ain't going to miss it. They're just low density. But yeah, we've got some good areas to look for them, some good territories that we know. And yeah, we'll certainly spend a lot of time walking the trails and looking, just birding in general. And whilst you're doing that, you then start finding some of these rarer species like the whiteheads trio, again, spider hunter, trogon, and broadbill. This is another absolute jewel of a bird. And there's a bunch of these green broadbills as well that are found in Borneo or just in Southeast Asia. This one's endemic though to Borneo, the whitehead's broadbill. It's also the largest of these broadbills as well. That's a really good sized species. In fact, when I saw my first one, I couldn't believe how big it was as a bird. It's a chunky bird, and just a real statement bird in many ways. So yeah, great species to see. And yeah, whilst you're walking around, there's some cool species as well. It's almost like Venus flytrap. These are pitcher plants. You see a lot of them around. Yeah, catching insects and various little insects that they're attracted to them. And yeah, there's a variety of different species on the mountain. And this is another one of the big highlights that hopefully when we're in the area, there's one of these that are actually blooming. The flower itself doesn't last for a particularly long time, but Rafflesia, I think there's about 41 different species of Rafflesia across the Southeast Asian area. Most of them are in Indonesia and in places like Borneo and the Malay Peninsula. But yeah, they're absolutely amazing, and it really just is a flower. There's no stem, there's no roots. They live off a host plant, and yeah, the flower itself almost smells, when you get really close to it, like rotting flesh in many ways. So yeah, fascinating species. This one actually, interestingly enough, is Rafflesia keefi. Nothing to do with me itself, but it's just a matter of interest. It's the one that tends to occur around Kinabalu itself. And but yeah, the largest one of these flowers are about a meter long. So you're looking at 3 foot. It's a size flower. Very interesting flower and species to see whilst you're in that area. But we'll keep our sort of eyes to the ground and chatting with the locals and what have you. And yeah, if there's any blooming, we'll certainly duck out and go and try and see one, because they're very cool species to see. Right, we are now leaving the mountains. We're leaving all the highlands and the cool, and we're heading over to the lowlands. So what we do is we actually fly from Kota Kinabalu itself across Sabah, and we go to the town of Lahad Datu. And from Lahad Datu, it's about a 2.5 hour drive inland towards the Danum Valley, which is going to be our next stop on the itinerary, and really is one of the core birding zones in Borneo. It's an extraordinary part of the world. Just the location itself, the quality of the birds, the whole experience, and it's not just the birds, it's the mammals too. They're just mind-blowing. And you're in an absolute sanctuary when you're there, and it feels like it. And it's just a treat of a place, and one that you really want to experience at some point in your life. this just gives you a bit of an idea of what the forest is like. You can see dense, but yeah, the road that sort of goes through. And as I said, it's 2.5 hours that you drive through forests that are not too dissimilar to this. Some of it's been logged along the way and what have you. But yeah, massive areas of forest, a lot of birds to look out for even on the drives. This is actually once you start getting into the Borneo Rainforest Lodge grounds itself, this particular photo. But yeah, it gives a lovely indication of what the forest is like, and also the areas that you bird, because this is one of the key birding zones, using the roads in the area to find species. We'll also go onto trails and what have you as well, but more of that's coming up. Right, Borneo Rainforest Lodge. This is most of you have probably heard of it before, or maybe have friends that have stayed here. As I say, it's an amazing location. It's been beautifully done. It's right in the heart of the Danum Valley, and so it means that all the birds that are surrounding and the animals that are surrounding you in the area are just so authentic. And it's situated right along the river as well. So yeah, a lot of great species around. This is just a view of the gardens and over towards the dining room itself. This is a view looking back towards the river. So again, just gives you an idea of position. And I've included quite a few of the room shots here as well. So another just scenic view looking out to the river itself. I remember actually on one trip this is a balcony over here, and you can actually have afternoon tea. And I remember sitting out here and watching green broadbills in this tree right here, and orangutan right on the other side of the river. So we set up the scope on both of them, and you were literally, binoculars or binoculars or telescope, depending on what you wanted to look at. It's just a mind-blowing place. And yeah, there's so much possibility around there. This just gives you an idea. This is some of the common rooms in the lounges itself. Again, just surrounded by forest. This is the main dining area and reception area, just to give you an idea of what the lodges look like. These are the deluxe jungle chalets. So a lot of the accommodation here is actually, it was very nice when I first visited, but it's ramped up almost another level. They've really done the accommodations beautifully, and this has received quite a revamp in the last few years. These are the deluxe jungle chalets. Just gives you an idea of what they look like. This is one of the inside rooms. You can see they're well appointed, very comfortable, and they've got views like this. You can sit out and just really be in nature and enjoy the surroundings as well during the heat of the day. This is just a bit of an aerial shot, gives you an idea of the premium deluxe chalets. I haven't included all the room types. It's just to give you an idea of what Borneo Rainforest Lodge is like, where it's situated, and almost that sanctuary feel that it creates, or that has been created. And again, as I said, the units have been very well done. So these are, just a view of some of the premium deluxe chalets. This is a little bit closer, so it gives you an idea of the decks, the space, what your room is like. And they've even got pools and what have you, outdoor pools and some very attractive areas, I guess you can say. This is again the deck, the pool, and your view of the river and the forest. It's pretty amazing. There's another one of the rooms. This is actually a room in the double-story villas. Again, it's got beautiful riverside views, and again a beautifully appointed room. And again, just showcasing some more of the views that you get from the decks itself. Again, this is from the double-story villa. So enough of the accommodations. We're now in the Danum Valley, and we want to go birding. We want to go and see what animals are around. And one of the best places to do that is from the brilliant Canopy walkway. This is a superb birding spot. There's a lot of good birding places in the Danum. As I say, the roads are fantastic. The interior trails are fantastic for certain birds. And then places like the Canopy walkway. So you can see they've got these platforms out here that have been done and on a lot of the big, large emergent trees. And they give you a lot of space where you can then, be spread out. It makes a very stable base. You can even use a telescope from up here. And you can even see the swing bridge itself. There's some folks walking on. It's not one of these swing bridges that swing from side to side and you feel unstable. It's really quite easy crossing in many ways. And yeah, there's just two folks who are enjoying their time up on the Canopy walkway. The Canopy walkway itself is about 20 meters high, so about like 100 feet high. and it's about 300 meters in length. So there's a good number of platforms and these swing bridges, and you can access a really good chunk of forest whilst you're up on the Canopy walkway. So some of the great birds that are around, there's species like brown-throated sunbird. These can be seen around the lodge itself. Ashy tailor bird is another good species that's around the lodge, and then also species like rufous-tailed tailor bird. These are all sort of nice species right in the lodge grounds that one can typically see. But a lot of people dream about coming to the Danum Valley and seeing birds like this. This is the great Argus, absolutely spectacular pheasant of lowland forest in Southeast Asia. And Borneo in particular, the Danum Valley is one of the last strongholds where you can try and see the species. This is just another image of great Argus. I mean, I had to include both of them, just that tail, and then just, this beautiful shot. This was a male that was in full display on one of the actual trails itself that we came across. So you'll often hear this loud call in the forest and kind of gives away where they are. But the males have got these territories, and then they've got these display courts as well. And it really is an amazing experience if we can, get fortunate enough to encounter one on a display court like this, because they just are so showy and so spectacular. But even if they're not, you can still bump into them in the understory from time to time on the trails and what have you whilst you're walking. And then the endemic Bornean Bristlehead. This is a pretty crazy bird, and one that has driven ornithologists nuts, I guess, for a bunch of years, because it's been all over the show in various different families, from the shrikes and aberrant bulbuls, and it's been all over the show. But anyway, at the moment, it is very much firmly placed in its own endemic family, the Bornean Bristlehead. They tend to go around in these small little groups, and they can be quite noisy, the groups as well. One of the best ways to try and find them is to actually lock onto the call, and then you know that they're in the zone. They're quite nomadic as well, so they do move around in areas, but the Danum Valley is a particularly good place to try and see Bornean Bristlehead. The other top place as well is Sepilok. Sepilok's another fantastic place to see that. To try and see the species from the Canopy walkway that they've got out there. But Sepilok we include in one of the extensions. It's not part of the main ABA tour itself. But if anybody who wants a really good chance for Bornean Bristlehead, main tour and jump onto the extension as well, because you really want to just maximize your chances for the species. They're not easy, but obviously there are techniques and ways to try and see this bird. But yeah, gorgeous thing and very, very unique. This is another one that's a lot of family listers have become very interested in, the crested jay shrike. So it used to just be called crested jay, and it was in the jays. It was kind of an aberrant jay / magpie, and it's now been elevated to its own family. It's a crazy looking bird, and it's a very cool species to see, but it's quite uncommon. But the Danum Valley does give chances for this particular species, and it's just one of those sort of low density rainforest species. But yeah, if you're a family lister, this is certainly one that's going to grab your attention as well, because, as I say, recently elevated into its own monotypic family. Right, other great birds around in the Danum Valley. I mean, before I went to Borneo, this was one of the birds I wanted to see more than any other almost. I mean, rhinoceros hornbill. Hornbills are incredible birds as it is, and Asia's blessed to have a lot of these magnificent big hornbills. But rhinoceros hornbill is right up there when it comes to spectacular. And I mean, just look at that casque. It's pretty mind-blowing, and just the color of the casque as well. So you actually hear these birds coming through the forest. They're that loud. They're not inconspicuous. And again, the Danum Valley being the pristine location that it is, species like rhinoceros hornbills are again not uncommon in the Danum Valley. They're a real treat. This one is in, slightly more peril. Helmeted hornbill. It's now critically endangered. It's a very sad story. In many ways, the Danum Valley is still one of the strongholds for the bird. But again, it's not a common species there, and it's not a common species anywhere throughout its range. But unfortunately, it's just the range has been fragmented through deforestation. But unfortunately, this species is hunted as well for its casque. So birds are killed, and then they do these ornate carvings into the casque of the hornbill, and they get sold and people buy them and what have you. But unfortunately, yeah, the species has suffered in a massive way on multiple fronts, to the point now where it is critically endangered. I mean, it's a ridiculous bird. You know, if you've been into Australasia before and some parts of Indonesia and seen paradise kingfishers, when I first saw this bird in a bird book, I thought, my goodness, it's like a giant paradise kingfisher, and it is a big bird. But just with that tail, it's so unique. But yeah, beautiful bird, and certainly one we'll be looking for when we're up in the Danum Valley. As I say, one of the last strongholds for the species. Right, as I mentioned before, mammals always front and center as well in places like the Danum Valley. Bornean orangutan. This is the place to see Bornean orangutan. There's a number of big males in the area, family groups, and yeah, the Danum Valley provides one of the most authentic places to try and see the species. This is a shot of a baby, very, very cool, very cute, very odd looking. But yeah, you see moms and babies. You sometimes see them even. Yeah, I've had them many times from the Canopy walkway itself, actually building nests, sleeping areas for the night, and then waking up the next morning, and you get to experience them in the Danum Valley. It's a very, very special part of the tour. Seeing Bornean orangutan, in its great habitat. So Bornean gibbon, another endemic. This is one of the classic calls that sort of serenade you in the morning as you're waking up. Part of the dawn chorus is very much Bornean gibbons. Yeah, magnificent calls, great species. I mean, just look at the length of those limbs, and these are incredibly agile. And again, the Danum Valley gives you a great chance at seeing and experiencing these fabulous apes. Again, another shot of Bornean gibbon. Again, just as you can see those arms, they're a magnificent species. Another very cool species of primate that is also found in the Danum Valley are these maroon langurs or red leaf monkeys, and they're also endemic, so they're only found on Borneo. This is a very cool shot with a mom and a baby. You can see the babies are quite light. They start getting a little bit of more of their maroon color the older they get. And he has a little guy that's or a little girl that is got a little bit more age, showing off its long tail, but they're as cute as buttons. Right, so we mentioned the Canopy walkway being a great opportunity for seeing birds itself, and yeah, a lot of the species can be seen up there. So a lot more of the canopy type species. You get to see birds like these black and yellow broadbills. Great birds of more of the canopy forest. A green broadbill as well. Stunning little gem, little jewel of the forest. And again, the Canopy walkway is quite a good place to see them. And then other broadbills like the dusky broadbill. This is the largest of the broadbills and really has a proper chunky broad bill. And these are good sized birds. And I would say the Danum Canopy walkway is probably the best place that I've been to try and see this bird. It tends to be one of the more uncommon broadbills, but yeah, Danum Valley and particularly the Canopy walkway is a fantastic spot for these birds. This is another beautiful raptor that's found out there, the Wallace's hawk eagle. We'll be keeping our eyes open for these forest eagles. And then some other different woodpeckers, these little piculets. There's not many piculets in Borneo, but yeah, the rufous is a gorgeous species. And again, you've got really good chances, sometimes in the understory trails or from the Canopy walkway itself. This used to be called dark-throated oriole for those that have been into Southeast Asia before, and it's just very recently been split into two separate species, with ventriloquial oriole now the species that occurs in the Danum Valley. This is a female, but again, a species often sighted from the Canopy walkway itself. And then another gorgeous bird of the area is the red-bearded bee-eater. There's 3 bearded bee-eaters through Asia: the blue-bearded bee-eater, which is quite widespread on the Indian subcontinent, and then the purple bearded bee-eater, which is endemic to Sulawesi, and then this one, the red bearded bee-eater, which is found in Southeast Asia, and they're just stunning birds. And again, the Canopy walkway is a good place to try and connect with this gorgeous bee-eater. These are whiskered tree swift, again, one of the more attractive tree swifts. Tree swifts, again, are yeah, a family that most of you will not be familiar with if you haven't traveled into Asia or into parts of Australasia. And the whiskered tree swift is, yeah, a very cool species to see out in the Danum Valley. Also perched up high, this is another endemic little raptor, the white-fronted falconet. They're teeny little guys. They're not particularly big in size. And you scan sort of these exposed dead perches. Whenever you see these dead trees or dead perches, yeah, keep scanning and try and find white-fronted falconet. Again, they're not particularly common, but they are around. But yeah, good scanning, good spotting tends to yield sightings of them. This is one of the most nomadic birds actually to the area, the jambu fruit dove. A lot of people go to the Danum Valley and then leave the Danum Valley and do not see a jambu fruit dove. And in fact, most people can visit 5, 10 times. There's plenty guides out there that have never seen jambu fruit dove. But I include the picture because this one was visiting a fruiting tree actually, and just a stunning male. And yeah, as I say, just a very nomadic species. But when they're in the area, they tend to be around fruiting trees, and the Danum Valley certainly has a plethora of those. So you're always in with a chance. This is another species. These green pigeons are just stunning. A little green pigeon often attends fruiting trees as well. And then yeah, malkoas, these type of strange kukels. They're in the cuckoo family, and I guess a little bit like neotropical squirrel cuckoo in a way, not quite as big, but that kind of proportion, and that type of bird. But the malkoas of Asia are very, very cool. They've got a lot of color, a lot of attitude, and there's a bunch of different possible malkoas on the island of Borneo. This is the chestnut-breasted malkoa, one of my favorites. And then we move into the understory. So dropping off the canopy, you start heading into the forest trails, and you start finding birds like gray-hooded babbler. This has also been part of a split. If you're looking at this photo and thinking, that's a chestnut-winged babbler, you'd be correct. So the old name was chestnut-winged, and there's now been split. The ones out here are now called gray-hooded babblers. But yeah, one of the more common babbler species of the understory, and a real characteristic of Bornean understory is these mixed babbler flocks, and they're very exciting. The list of babblers is pretty long, and you spend quite a lot of time. They're noisy, and you sort through them and get to experience them, and it's a really cool experience in the understory forests. This is one of the more special woodpeckers around there, the orange-backed woodpecker. It's quite a large woodpecker, and yeah, it's an uncommon species. But yeah, beautiful bird, and yeah, quite unique. Then another rain babbler. Oh, what would be a trip to Asia and rainforest, as I say, without a good rain babbler? So it's a striped rain babbler. Good ones to look for in the understory, as I say. And then some more pheasants. So besides great Argus, we've got the endemic Bornean crested fireback. So differs from Malaysian crested fireback in that this one's got sort of more of a fee tail, whereas the Malaysian bird is more white. So that's a pretty obvious feature, but they don't overlap. And this one, yeah, the Bornean crested fireback. This one you can even see around the lodge itself, the lodge grounds. In fact, it's an excellent place to often see them. Also in the understory, birds like rufous-chested flycatcher, really cool, distinctive looking birds. And then one of the more difficult birds of the understory, really, the Bornean wren babbler. These ones, super sulky. It's actually endemic as well. I see I missed the label on that one, but yeah, it's a real quality endemic species, and one that, yeah, we hope to bump into or hear calling during our time in the birding the understory. And then trogons, beautiful trogons out in the Danum Valley. This is the scarlet rum trogon, and there's also the Daiard's trogon as well. These are just, again, spectacular birds. You'll notice there's a lot of brightly colored birds in Borneo as well, and it really is part of what makes it so attractive. You know, you're looking for a variety of specials, endemics, rare species, but some of the more common species as well, or just run-of-the-mill birds are some very brightly colored, beautiful birds, and Daiard's trogon is certainly one of those. Right, on to pittas. Borneo is blessed to have a real serious variety of pittas. And these are some of, well, for most people visiting anywhere in Asia, I think these are always right at the top of the list of the birds you want to see. I mean, they're beautiful. They're not easy to see. But yeah, the little jewels of the forest are always highlights. And the Danum Valley is a magnificent place to try and see a variety of these. This one, the black-crowned pitta, is a Bornean endemic. And there's excellent chance of seeing this bird. This is the most common or the most widespread or easiest of the pittas. It's still not an easy bird, but it is the easiest of the pittas occurring in the area. This one, as I mentioned before, this is one of my favorites, the blue-headed pitta. It's just, the colors are electric and they explode in the understory. And yeah, magnificent bird to lay eyes on, and a real Danum Valley special. This one, there's not a lot of good photos of this bird around, and again, a little bit like Jambu fruit dove, a lot of people go time and time into areas where giant pitta occurs and you don't sniff them. But Danum Valley certainly gives you a chance. I've been fortunate to see it there a couple of times, and it definitely gives you probably better chances than a lot of areas where they're found. So you're always in with a shout. And again, the time where we've timed the ABA tour is a very good time for pittas. So you really give yourself an excellent chance for trying to see a few of these real, as I say, jewels of the understory. This one, the Bornean banded pitta, endemic as well, and another species that is that's very uncommon. It is not an easy bird. There are arguably better areas in the Danum Valley to see the species, but Danum certainly gives you a chance. And one of our extensions that we offer actually gives you the best chances for the species, but yeah, it's certainly possible in the Danum Valley, and definitely one to keep our eyes and ears open for. And then finally, the blue banded pitta. This is probably the hardest of the lot. It is resident in the Danum Valley, but it's just not easy. Yeah, certain trails are better for it than others, but again, hearing it calling, yeah, you put the time and effort in, you're likely to probably get a call or response. Seeing it needs a little more luck. Again, there's areas in Sarawak and what have you that are probably a little bit easier for this particular pitta, but there's certainly chances when you're in the Danum Valley. And as I mentioned, right earlier, if you can cast your memory back that far, when you're there in the Danum Valley, you've always got a chance. And that's the beautiful thing. That's the reality. When you're there, you're allowed to dream. When you're there, you've got opportunities for these birds, and they are there. So, we'll be certainly keeping eyes and ears open in a big way. Right, night birding is another feature, and it's not just night birding, but night viewing. This barred eagle owl picture was obviously taken during the day, but barred eagle owls are real special that we sometimes see on night drives when we're out in the Danum Valley. And this is another one, the brown wood owl, which has now been proposed as a split as Bornean wood owl, which would become an endemic to Borneo. But yeah, great bird, and this one's a bit more common than the barred eagle owl, and we usually do see them on the night drives through the Danum Valley. But it's the mammals that probably take center stage when it comes to night drives. From Borneo Rainforest Lodge. So we go out in their vehicles and carefully spotlight the guys. They know the territories, they know the zones. We can even do night walks as well, like around the lodge grounds and some of the little trails. And this western tarsier is super, super cute. They're not easy to see, but again, when you're there, you've got chances. What makes them most difficult is that they don't really have eye shine. So it makes them a bit more of a challenge to spot. But they're teeny as well. They're really small little guys. But there's a particular area around the lodge itself where we can search for these guys, and we sometimes get lucky. This is Sunda leopard cat, beautiful species, and this is one of the big highlights really on a night drive out there. Chances of seeing the species are actually good, and cats are never easy. But Sunda leopard cat, we've got pretty good chances in the Danum Valley from the night drives. This is the bearded pig, which is also found out there. Sometimes bump into them in the early morning, late afternoon, but they're there in the rainforest as well. Cool species to see. Then Malay civets, beautiful. I mean, look at the patterning on this civet. They're really stunning. And again, Danum Valley offers you great chances at seeing these civets, and also some of the palm civets as well. And also, mammals like Sunda Kalugo, crazy. Primitive species, also called the flying lemur. So you can see they've actually got this webbing here between the hind legs and the front legs. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing picture, this. We sometimes see them flat against the trunks of trees, and during the day, where they're actually just sort of sleeping, you can get some magnificent views. And then, yeah, sometimes you get lucky and you see them at night like this as well, when they're a bit more active. But yeah, very, very cool mammal to see when you're in that part of the world. And then finally, I guess this is the holy grail of them all, the cinder clouded leopard. It's probably the one that everyone dreams about. I mean, you come to Africa, you want to see leopards. You go to Brazil, you want to see jaguars. You go to India, you want to see tigers. I mean, the big cats are very, very special. This is probably the hardest of the lot, the cinder clouded leopard. This phenomenal picture was actually taken by one of our guides who will actually be with us on the ABA Borneo trip, one of the local guides there. And they actually bumped into this. This was in the Danum Valley on the entrance road. If I recall correctly, it was about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So not even at night. And when you're out there again, you've got chances. It's a mind-blowing photograph. But yeah, we do see them sometimes from the night drives out there. You've just got to be lucky. You've got to put yourself in the area, and you need an element of luck. What we've done as well is that we've obviously got a chance when we're on the ABA tour. We will be doing night drives, so we've got a chance on the main tour itself of seeing a cloud leopard. But yeah, as I say, they're very hard. They're very low density. But what we've done is we've actually got a special mammal extension, which will run afterwards. And we're going to put in extra time for clouded leopard in a few other zones. We're going to go out to Tabin. We're going to go out to the Kinabatangan area and then really work the zones at night for longer periods of time and really try for the species. So if this is a big holy grail target for you, you might want to consider thinking about that. Again, nothing's guaranteed when it comes to cinder clouded leopards, but you can certainly try. And then just quickly moving further afield, I know we're getting well past the hour over here, but there's so much to cover on this amazing island. Yeah, as I say, a little bit further afield, we've got extensions that are heading out to the Malay Peninsula. That's the top slide. So areas like Kuala Lumpur and Fraser's Hill. We've got another little extension that's going to target the rail babbler as well, which is a special monotypic family. And then one of the other extensions just does some different areas through Sabah in Borneo. So Mount Rusmadi, which has come onto the map recently for some very special pheasants, and then Sepilok and the Kinabatangan River. So quickly, the Kinabatangan River, beautiful lowland forest, this river that runs out to the sea, and just gorgeous forest that lines the banks of the river. And yeah, you really can explore this at length. There's so many tributaries along the river, so many fabulous species, great birds, great mammals, and you largely bird this by boat, so it's very comfortable birding, doing some of the smaller tributaries and what have you by boat as well, and it really gives you up close personal experiences with a lot of the species that are there. This gives you a little bit of a feel for what it's like moving through on these boats through the river. And you can pull into the banks and you can switch off engines and you can try for some of the cool birds as well. And it's, yeah, a very, very special place. This is, yeah, again, exploring one of the more narrow channels as well by boat. And yeah, one of the big specials out there is the endemic Bornean ground cuckoo. It's a magnificent bird. Very hard to find. All the ground cuckoos are notoriously difficult. For those that birded in the near tropics, you'll know there's 5 odd species out there, and they're all super hard. And the Asian ones are no different. Sumatran, Bornean, and coral-billed. But this Bornean ground cuckoo, it occurs in the Danum Valley as well. But the best place to try and find it or to really search for it is along the Kinabatangan River and some of the tributaries. This is another special species that occurs out there, the storm stork. It's an endangered species and one that is very special to the Kinabatangan River area. This is a recently split species, the Sabah partridge, so actually just endemic to Sabah, and it's a split from the old chestnut necklace partridge. And this is a particularly good spot to try and see Sabah partridge as well. And there's also cool woodpeckers there, like that neck woodpecker that you can see from the boats. And a good place for some different broadbills as well. This one tends to like, this is the black and red broadbill, which tends to like more water-associated habitat. So riverine forest adjacent to waterways and little water zones. Another gorgeous broadbill. This is a very cool, different pitta as well. Again, prefers sort of these watery areas in a way, or vegetation alongside water zones, and the Kinabatangan River is a good spot for western hooded pitta. You'll see western there in front of the hooded pitta. Again, this is because of splits. I think hooded pitta has now been split into 4 species, according to the latest ISC checklist. It's a great place to find wrinkled hornbill. This is an endangered species as well. In fact, the Kinabatangan River probably offers the best hornbill diversity out. It's an incredible place for hornbills, and big hornbills as well, like wrinkled. You see them frequently. They're not uncommon. Birds like rhinoceros hornbill, again, is also around. We couldn't help but include another shot of this bird. It's just so spectacular. And then some crazy birds as well, like the endangered white-crowned hornbill. This bird doesn't sit quite out like the others, but then tends to be more in the sort of understory and growth. But Kinabatangan River, excellent spot to try and find this bird. And then mammals as well. So proboscis monkey, it's an endemic primate. It's also endangered, but this is the place to find proboscis monkeys. They love the waterways. They love the big trees alongside the waterways. So you find big family groups of them out when you're exploring the Kinabatangan River. And it's not uncommon to come across a few groups during the day whilst you're out exploring, and they're very cool. They're just so unique. They've got a great color pattern, and then obviously that big proboscis, that big nose on the males. Here's another male that's looking very intently at us with his rather large schnoz. Right, another mammal. That's on Borneo. I call the big Bornean pygmy elephant there, but it's essentially a subspecies of Asian elephant, and they are slightly smaller on the island of Borneo. But the Kinabatangan River, particularly good area to find them. They're also in the Danum Valley. We actually see them there quite frequently in the Danum Valley itself. But Kinabatangan River, whilst you're on the cruises and what have you around on the river itself, good chances for seeing elephant. And then again, night boat trips are a real feature. So when you go out on the Kinabatangan River after dark, you often find these birds roosting at the edge of the river. And there's a whole variety of them that you tend to pick up. So birds like yellow bittern, stork-billed kingfisher, again, this was taken at night. They just sit on these little open lianas or little open vines, sort of across or overhanging the river itself. And it just gives added protection essentially for the birds. But when you're cruising along there quietly on the boats, gives you a great opportunity of seeing some of these species really up close, and great studies of them as well. This is blue-eared kingfisher, another gorgeous species. And again, this is whilst on a night boat trip. And then you get species like reticulated python out there as well. Again, this was taken at night. Gorgeous python. And not too uncommon in the area. Again, you're seeing them on boat or by boat. One of the real highlights there at night from a birding point of view is certainly buffy fish owls. They're quite common along the river, multiple pairs of them, and they come out to the edge, and sometimes you see them during the day as well, day roosts, but they often come right to the edge of the river, and then they use open perches for fishing and what have you. And they're beautiful species to see, as you can see them in the photo, sort of shows it all. One of the great fish owls. This one tends to be a little more uncommon, or should I say rare, really. The Oriental Bay owl. For many years, the species was almost unknown in a way. People didn't really know how to find it. And we're just finding more and more regularly, especially the last decade or two, sightings of the species have just gone up. And we really, I guess, know how to find it now in a way, really locked onto the call, know some good zones and areas, particularly through Southeast Asia and the island of Borneo, where you've got a chance at seeing this bird. It's never a common species, but you actually have a realistic chance of finding Oriental Bay owl these days when you're exploring Southeast Asia. But still, a crazy owl. It's in the barn owl family. You can see that beautiful facial disc, and just a really, really cool bird. This is the large frogmouth. Another fabulous species. Frogmouths are pretty crazy. They're a bit like cotus in the neotropics, and they're in their own family in Asia and Australasia. And the large frogmouth is particularly big. And yeah, there's a few frogmouths that are possible on the tour route, but large frogmouth, while it occurs in the Danum Valley, is probably easiest to try and see out here along the Kinabatangan River. And then again, there's some great mammals as well. So leopard cats are also possible in the area, just like they're on the Danum Valley. And then small-toothed palm civet, this tends to be quite a common mammal in the area. Get some good views. And then if we're really lucky, we might see the Bornean slow loris. Right, the last few images, folks. Thank you for sticking with me. Hope you've enjoyed your time listening to me. But yeah, Bornean peacock pheasant. I had to end off with some of these pheasants because when I first went, and just even a few years ago, this bird was totally mythical and properly mythical, like unknown. You know, there was just no accessible sites for the bird. Very few modern day records even. And yeah, amazingly, as people explore and look further and deeper dive, and yeah, you know, you start these mythical birds slowly become, I guess, you know, possible. And that's what's happened with Bornean peacock pheasant, where you can actually go to specially located blinds in the forest and have a chance at actually seeing a Bornean peacock pheasant. And it's, yeah, ridiculously cool bird, super rare. But this is part of what makes Borneo. I mean, Dan mentioned, you know, at the start that there's never been a better time to visit Borneo, and largely because of accessibility, comfort of travel, you know, those sort of things, but also the species that have come on the map. You know, it's just that much easier to see pittas now than it was 15, 20 years ago. So many of the pheasants, impossible, now more possible. You know, and there's just, yeah, a lot of these species are just that much more accessible. We just know that much more about them. And yeah, just our understanding of the species has certainly gone up. But yeah, Bornean peacock pheasant, absolutely spectacular. The other massive special is bulbous pheasant. This bird as well was also just mythical. Very few records, hardly known in life. None of us ever sniffed this species, and it's very much a hill forest kind of bird. But yeah, there's some good zones for this species now, and particularly one hide which we visited on one of the extensions out in this is the Trismuddy area for the endemic bulbous pheasant. This is a spectacular male. And yeah, you spend time in the blinds, and yeah, again, your chance of seeing the species is high. And the same goes with this bird here, the crested partridge or crested wood partridge. Another spectacular bird. This is the male, but a bird that, yeah, not many people saw, or if you did, it was a glimpse in the trail as it went past. A little more frequently encountered than the previous two pheasants, but crested partridge has become quite gettable in the same area as the bulbous pheasant. And then just finally, just to mention the rail babbler. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have an extension, a specific extension to the main tour to go and try and find the species. Put in some real dedicated time for it. It's never an easy bird, but it is in its own monotypic family, the rail babbler. And so yeah, not only is it beautiful, not only is it charismatic, not only is it unique, and you kind of want to see it anyway, but it just happens to be in its own darn family, which makes it just that much more cool. And again, for those who are on the hunt or trying to see as many of the unique families as possible, those unique birds, the rail babbler's right up there. And so we've put on this little extension as well, where you've got a better than average chance of going out and trying to see this bird, because you really put time and effort in to a particular location for it. And that brings me to the end, where our blue-headed pitta is saying thank you very much to all of you for joining me this evening, for listening to me rattle on about Borneo. I could go on for a lot longer. I'm sure you can probably hear that in my voice. But yeah, it's an exciting part of the world. It really gets the adrenaline going in me. And as I say, I could carry on and on and on, but we've gone well over the time now. So as I say, thank you so much for all of you for sticking with me. And yeah, we're over to Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Keith. Your passion is, as I said before, it's certainly contagious. Your experience, Keith has personally led around 6 tours to Borneo. So I'm sure that his experience on this fabulous island just speaks volumes. I have been going through some of the questions and answering some of the questions as Keith has been talking, but I will relay some of those over to Keith. I will try and answer some of them myself. But Keith, perhaps you could kick things off, and we have several questions relating to timing. What is the best time to visit Borneo? Why have we selected August for this tour? Are December through March typically good months? So perhaps you could speak a few moments to seasonality in Borneo and why August is a particularly good month to visit.
Yeah, for sure. Good question. So just quickly, so I've been through two major time frames, I would say. So February, March, that January, February, March frame where there tends to be less rain, but there are migrants that come in. So you pick up birds like blue and white flycatcher in the mountains and parts of Malaysia as well. I've got some of the cool birds like mugi maki flycatchers and tiger shrikes are in and what have you. So that February, March gives you those sort of migrants moving through. A little bit less rain. But what I find, and it's a great time of the year to visit, because it's one of the real good pockets, that sort of Feb, March. The other great pocket as well is the sort of June, July, August time frame. And if you ever look at rainfall maps and what have you, you'll actually see that there's a bit more rainfall during that time of the year. But part of what makes it so good is that you tend to just have more fruiting trees, and you tend to, because of the rain, it's not the worst thing for the lowland rainforests. So I always say sometimes, you can be birding in the Danum Valley, the morning can pump. You go out there in the afternoon, it can be really quiet sometimes. It can be sort of hot and stifling. If you have rain in the afternoon, you almost get an afternoon washed out in a way, where you lose a few hours, but that next morning absolutely pumps. And rain is not the worst thing, particularly for some of the harder understory species, and particularly pittas. And so the sort of August timeframe, it's not like it just sits there and rains all the time. You might have a spit in the spot here and there, but that rain, that sort of continuous, just every few days, some rain really livens the forest up, and you want a lively forest. The worst is to sit there and bird for 12 hours in the rainforest and nothing's calling because it's so darn hot and it's so darn dry. You can lose 2 or 3 or 4 hours to rain, and that's quite okay. And because we've got our vehicles right nearby and the lodge is so close, and base so close by, it's really easy to flip back to the lodge and take it in shifts like that. So if there is rain, it doesn't impact things in a big way. But that's why that August September timeframe is particularly good.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. Julie Beer had a number of questions. I'll quickly answer 2 of Julie's questions. I did answer some of the others, but the first is, are the orangutans protected in the Danum Valley, and roughly how many are there in this area? There's an estimated 500. I had to admittedly look online to pick this out. But there's an estimated 500 orangutans in the wider Danum Valley conservation area, meaning that we've got an absolutely excellent chance of seeing them. Additionally, Julie asked, the Bornean Bristlehead has such a huge bill. Is it used to eat something special? Julie, I'm by no means an expert on Bornean bristleheads. I've not seen the bird myself, but from what I understand, it's totally omnivorous. So they'll go for fruits, they'll go for small lizards, insects, and a big, strong bill like that is perfectly adapted to eating a diverse diet. Julie Bauer, I hope I'm saying that correctly, had another question about leeches. Keith, I wonder if you could touch base quickly. I know that's a concern that many people have visiting these tropical sites. So could you just touch base briefly on leeches and what precautionary measures people can take to protect themselves against leeches?
Yeah, for sure. I'll get into leeches for sure. I just thought, John, you were there just last year, right? I mean, what was your experience as far as leeches was concerned?
Well, that it is something I considered as well. Fortunately, leech socks are so small and lightweight that I packed them.
Mm.
They never came out of the suitcase. Now I was there in the late fall as well. Didn't get to Danum Valley because, as we've all discussed before this call, it's hard to get to unless you're have some prior arrangements, which we've arranged for this tour. So I didn't get to Danum Valley, but even in the areas on Kinabalu or anywhere else I went in lowland forest, Sepalak, there was, we encountered, my nephew and I, one leech, which was almost exciting because to go there and not encounter it would have been a little disappointing. But that was my experience with them.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that, John. Yeah. And that's exactly kind of where I was going. It's a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes leeches are quite active, and I guess a lot of it depends on the amount of rain to some degree. And it also depends on how much time you spend in certain areas of the interior trails, where the leech activity might just be a little bit up or down. But as you know, as John mentioned as well, leech socks are readily available, and yeah, they just work. They just work well. So it's something that fits inside your foot. Well, it's over your foot or over your pant leg. You tie it up around below your knee, and then you slip your foot as you would almost like a sock inside your shoe, and it sits like that. So any of the leeches that are on the ground, you straight away see them climbing up. There's no way they can get inside and get you in any way. The only leeches that you sort of, if you're worried about getting bitten at all, you don't really feel anything, and they don't carry disease or anything. But if you are concerned, are the tiger leeches. They're not particularly large. They're just tiger. We call them tiger leeches because they've got little stripes on them. So it's not because of their size, but they are a little bit more arboreal, and so you can sometimes brush past a leaf or something, and maybe get a leech on you. But as John said, they're generally not. It's not like you walk into the forest and you're suddenly covered in 20 leeches. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. And then perhaps the last question we'll deal with this evening. Nate asks, are mammals a co-focus on the tour, or is our tour mostly about birds?
Well, it's a good question. I think hopefully the presentation did some justice in that regard, in that the mammals featured quite prominently in a way. Borneo's got a lot of special mammals, and I didn't even include all the squirrels. And I know not everyone's a huge squirrel fan, but my goodness, Borneo have got some cool squirrels, and they've got a lot of endemic squirrels as well. And some of them are teeny tiny, like these little least pygmy squirrels. And there's the whitehead's pygmy squirrel, which is crazy. It's got these little beautiful tufts that it's got on its head, and that's only found on Mount Kinabalu. There's just so many cool little species. So the mammals are a big focus, I guess, is where I'm getting. They absolutely up there with the birds. And there are times where we'll very much just dedicate time to actually spending looking for mammals, or enjoying our experience with the orangutans, with the gibbons, with the langurs. And then a lot of the species are also found at night. So we do go out, we do spend time at night. Particularly in the lowland forests. The mountains don't really have too many nocturnal species. But when we get to the Danum Valley, big focus on the mammals, and also on the other extensions as well. When you get out to the Kinabatangan River, as I mentioned, some very cool mammals to look for. And then obviously that rainforest mammals trip that we've got specially designed around giving a chance for clouded leopard. And will also give chances for many of the other great lowland rainforest mammal species.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Keith. There was another question that several guests inquired about. I have answered the question already in the chat function. The question pertained to what field guide would we recommend for Borneo. So I have posted the reference to the most recent book. It's The Birds of the Greater Sundas, the Philippines and Wallacea by Norman Arlott, published in 2018. That certainly covers all of Borneo. It's got fantastic illustrations, wonderful maps, and text to accompany each species. In addition to that, we can supply our pre-departure document to anyone who is interested. There was a question about references for mammals, insects, plants, etc. And all of that is covered in our pre-departure document. So at this point, I'm going to invite you to please email me personally, tailormade@rockjumper.com. The email address is on the slide in blue. Any questions that I may not have gotten to, any additional things that you may think of, please get in touch with us. We would be thrilled to answer your questions. There are still places remaining on the Borneo ABA tour, which is dated 27th of August to 6th of September this year. Places are limited, and there are separate rooming options at the Borneo Rainforest Lodge, all of which differ in price, and there are limited numbers of each one. And then places are limited for our 2 pre and post tour extensions. There we are limited to around 8 guests per tour. So we expect that these tours will fill up quite quickly. We hope that they will, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from many of you if you are interested in traveling with us later this year. I see we reached a maximum of 260 guests this evening, so thank you all for taking the time out of your days. We had about 15 different countries represented from all hemispheres, so thank you very much for your time this evening. Please do get in touch. We do look forward to hearing from you, and we are available to answer any additional questions that you might have. This webinar has been recorded this evening, and it will be made available on the Rock Jumper YouTube page in a few days' time, as well as on the ABA sites in due course. So if you would like to check it out, if you did miss the first half of the webinar, please feel free to log on to our YouTube pages in the coming days, and you'll find the webinar there. And then all that then remains is just to say a massive thank you again to you, Keith. Your experience in this part of the world is just legendary. So thank you for taking us on this brilliant virtual tour of Borneo. That's all from us this evening. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you on one of our tours very soon. Bye for now.
It was an absolute pleasure. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good day, everyone.